Hey folks, my name is Derrick. I'm the owner of Paulie Logan Square here in Chicago, Illinois. And today we're going to talk a little bit about making New York style pizza at home. So we have taken our recipe, modified it a little bit to make it easier for you guys. And we've got our mise en place here ready to go. And we're going to go through it all and let you know exactly what the steps are for how you want to make your New York style pizza dough at home. So we'll start out. We measure everything in baker's percentages. And for those that are unfamiliar with that, that's all relative percentages and weights relative to the amount of flour you use. So just to start out, I want to let you know we're using a 62% water hydration to flour ratio, a 0.2% instant yeast to flour ratio, 2.5% salt, and 2.0% oil. Now, we're going to go ahead and put all that together and let you know how things are looking. So, the flour here is 550 grams of flour. We use a higher gluten flour, usually around 13 to 14% protein, and you can find those at your store. So we're going to go ahead and get this right in our bowl. Roll out. Don't worry for those that don't have a scale at home. We'll make sure to give you a conversion so that you'll be able to measure out the pumps and get pretty close approximately to it too. And so we're using 62% water, which is 341 grams of room temperature. And what we're going to do is we're going to pour that in and give it a light mix with our hands. I always like to mix with my hands so you have an understanding of how the dough comes together. So what we want to do is just get it to the point where all the flour is fully hydrated, and then we're going to go through something called an autolyze. And the autolyze is a time where we basically just cover the dough, let it rest, and give it 30 minutes so that the water has time to start working with the flour and start building the gluten structures, which gives us that nice stretchy dough that we want. So you can see, we still got some flour on the edges. We're going to kind of scrape it down with our fingers. Continue to mix it together. The center's starting to come together. We don't want to overmix this, but we do want to make sure to get all the flour incorporated. Just about there. Now you can get a feel for it. It's going to be a little sticky. You can see we start having a mass that's starting to come together. And this is where you want to be. We're going to put this in the bowl, throw some plastic wrap over it so it doesn't dry out. Turn on our favorite Netflix episode, if Netflix is still relevant. And then in 30 minutes, we'll come back to add the rest of it. All right, welcome back. So we've let that autolyze for about 30 minutes now, started to develop some strength, and the flour is fully hydrated. We're ready to go for our next step. Our next step, we're going to be adding the yeast in, and the yeast is going to be 1.1 grams, or 0.2%. So what I want to do is just sprinkle it across the top. What we're going to do is knead the yeast in, give it some good folds. You can tell the dough is already starting to come together, feeling a little bit more stretchy. Mix that yeast in real good. And then we're going to give it a 5-minute rest before we add our stuff. Something I forgot to do. You wet your hands a little bit before you start mixing the dough. You move quickly, the dough doesn't stick to your hands nearly as well. We're going to start developing it into a ball. Wrap it up. Let it rest for another 5 minutes. And then we'll get ready to add our last couple ingredients. right, hope you enjoyed that 5-minute break. We're going to go ahead and unwrap it, and you can see the dough is starting to change, starting to rise a little bit in this process. So now what we're going to do is we're going to add the last 2 ingredients and give it a little bit more rest. First, I'm going to put down salt. This is a 2.5% recipe, so we're using that amount for salt. And it's 13.75 grams. If you want to round up to 14, that's fine too. We're going to sprinkle the salt over the top. Get back in there with our hand. Give it a nice little mix. Forgot to rub my hands. But that's okay, because in a second, I'm going to throw the oil down and mix the oil in. So if you're at home, feel free to mix on the table. I'm just doing this to have one less thing to clean. So if I'm making small batches, I'll do this at home in a bowl of some sort to control it. If you've got kids at home, great way for them to play around and not make a huge mess. And you contain everything inside that bowl, so you know you're really incorporating everything that you can. Right. Once that's starting to feel pretty good, you can see that it's not sticking as much anymore. It's starting to move nicely. And what we want to do is add our oil in. And our oil is 2% oil for this particular recipe. So that's 11 grams of oil that we're putting in. I'm using olive oil. You don't need to use the extra virgin olive oil. Extra virgin is a great finishing oil. You can use it if that's all you have, but it's kind of a waste in terms of putting it into the dough at this point. You're gonna bake off the dough and you're gonna lose some of that flavor. So you can use a regular olive oil if you don't want olive oil. And what we want to do now is you'll see that the dough is pretty oily. And we want to continue to mix it until the oil feels fully incorporated. The fastest way to do this is, I know most of you probably have a KitchenAid mixer at home, something along those lines. You can definitely use that with a dough hook to help mix things up. Another trick that you can use is if you have a food processor with a dough blade, you can use those to mix as well. And that'll help bring it together pretty quickly. That does a little bit more damage to the dough, so you're going to see a slightly different rise, a different process with that. But right now what I'm doing is taking it, folding it over, and kind of kneading the dough so that we're helping bring it together. And what we want to do is get it to the point where it's a nice, even dough mass. So you don't want to be able to see a whole bunch of streaky oil all over the top of it anymore on the bottom. And you can see as we do this, the oil is getting integrated into the dough. And so for those that are bread bakers out there, you can also use this time to do some good stretching folds. And further develop strength in the dough if you like. We won't go over that in today's tutorial. So we're going to keep this pretty basic for you guys that are just wanting to put together a quick dough for you to use possibly the same day, ideally maybe the next day or the day after, so the dough has some more time to develop some flavor. All right, if you look now, the dough's come together pretty nice. There's not much oil streaking at all, and it's sticking to our hands just about right. So like I said, quick movements. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to ball this up a little bit. And so I'm just taking the edges and folding them underneath and trying to connect it with my hands. Put it down. And give it a wrap. Give it 5 minutes, and then we're going to portion it out, and we'll go from there. All right, welcome back. This is our last step. So you can see those little folds, the dough's come together really nicely. And now all we're going to do is, after this last rest that we've done, is get it out and portion it into 2 sizes. So the recipe we've given you here today makes 2 adult-sized pizzas for your standard home cooking. You can also break this into 4 pizzas if you want your kids to play with it and have a smaller size pizza. So I'm just setting up a scale right now. What we want to do is find out exactly how much our dough weighs, so we can split it into the size that we want. Like I said, those quick little movements will help you work with the dough much faster and not have to stick to your hands too much. So looks like. It's going to have right about 796 grams. So we want to split that in half so we can make two separate dough balls. So I'm going to take this out. And just give me 1 second to get my tool. So we're going to kind of portion that out. If you don't have a scale, you can just kind of guess. 796, 375 right there. We're a little closer to 400. 390 is a good size. So if you're just making this at home, you don't need to make every single dough ball that same size. We just need to get close. So now that we know where we're at, we're just going to ball the dough together. And so similar to the large dough ball I did earlier, we're just going to take it, fold it over itself. You can see I turn it 90 degrees every time I fold it. And then after a couple folds, a nice tight ball. We're going to close the bottom up. There you go. We have a little dough ball. What we want to do is let this rest for 30 minutes at room temperature. So it has a little bit of time for the yeast to start activating, start moving, start to ferment inside the dough and get things rolling. And then after 30 minutes are up, throw it in your fridge, and you can use it within 4 hours. Or you can wait till the next day. I would not go longer than 3 days. You probably want to use it on the 3rd day, and this way you'll be able to have a great dough ball to stretch out your buns. Cover these guys up. You can either put them in a bag, or you can put them in a bowl and seal them, whatever works best for you. If you have a nice Tupperware where it can sit and expand, that'd be great too. Just make sure you put a little oil in the Tupperware so you can put it right out. And there we have it. We started a new dough ball. Thanks for joining us, and I hope to see some of your pizzas soon.